Welcome to Live, Laugh, Talk. I'm your host, James Graham, and I'm so happy to have my voice back today, at least getting it. And what a joy it is to be in your ear. In this episode, we will begin with the topic entitled, Let's De-Escalate. Then we will transition to our segment, How Did We Get Here? Followed by our hobbies and special interest section, and then conclude with our sunflower message. If you have any ideas on your mind you would like to share on the show, you would maybe like to be heard, even be a guest, write in. Admin at livelaughtalk.com. That's admin at livelaughtalk.com. Listening on Spotify, you can add a voice memo as well as comments and participate in our poll. Also, wherever it is that you listen to the podcast, we urge you to follow us, please, so that you're notified of new episodes when they're released. The topic that we will begin with is entitled, Let's De-Escalate. A student speaks out of turn in a classroom. A spouse, in a heated conversation, cuts off the other. A driver gets in front of another one in traffic. A passenger refuses to get out of the car during a police traffic stop. If in these situations, what would you do? What should you do? We would like to think that we would de-escalate the situation, right? Because every day we hear on the news of those who choose to do the opposite and the dire consequences that follow. Practicing de-escalation involves developing communication and conflict resolution skills to diffuse tense situations. There are some steps that could help us to practice de-escalation. One of these is staying calm, keeping our emotions in check and maintaining a calm demeanor. Our composure can have a calming effect on others. We can actively listen. See, listen carefully to the person you're interacting with and show empathy and understanding. And we can have the body language that go along with it by nodding, even paraphrasing, and acknowledging their feelings, especially in those spousal conversations we spoke about earlier. We could try to see the situation from the other person's perspective, understanding their emotions and concerns. Use non-confrontational language and tones can avoid blame, criticism. We can speak softly, respectfully. In these situations that escalate, a lot of times people may feel less threatened if they have some control over the situation. So maybe we can provide options when available. Respect personal boundaries and avoid getting too close, which can escalate tension. Let's all be mindful of words that may provoke anger or aggression, choosing our words carefully to keep the conversation constructive. And let's encourage the person to discuss solutions so that we can work together to find a resolution. And in those situations where safety is concerned, let's prioritize it, both ours and the other person's. And if the situation becomes dangerous, well, then we're going to have to definitely use the tactics mentioned above. Because in a lot of cases, we may be able to seek help from authorities or security personnel, but what if it's that authority that we're having the conflict with? So then we may have to use the tactics mentioned earlier or the ones that we're about to mention. And, we have to understand that de-escalation and even the steps that we may take in that may be able to help us to avoid terrible situations may not always be successful, but it helps to be patient and persistent in our efforts. There's also, if we're in a relationship with someone, the idea of training and role playing. We can consider enrolling in de escalation training programs or practicing with colleagues and friends through role playing scenarios. From there, we can reflect and learn. After de escalation situations, let's reflect on what went well and what could be improved because continuous learning is essential for improvement. We have to remember as well that de escalation techniques can be applied in various contexts, such as customer service, healthcare, law enforcement, and personal relationships. We should tailor our approach to the specific situation and individuals involved. Let's pay attention also to our body language. Maintain open and non threatening gestures, such as open palms and relaxed posture. Refrain from engaging in arguments or power struggles. Instead, focus on finding common ground and resolving issues. We should praise and acknowledge positive behavior or steps toward resolution, and this can encourage cooperation. Avoid taking sides or showing favoritism, especially in situations involving multiple parties. And in some cases, it may be best to just step away temporarily if the situation is not improving or if safety is a concern. And then we can revisit the situation later when emotions have cooled. There are cultural differences between us that come into communication styles and norms. And what may be considered respectful in one culture could be perceived differently in another. So we have to be aware of cultural sensitivity. And let's just all be honest. Practicing de escalation can be emotionally taxing. So we want to make sure that we prioritize in our lives self care and seek support or debrief with colleagues or supervisors when needed. If we're dealing with recurring or particularly challenging situations, let's consider involving a trained mediator or counselor who specializes in conflict resolution. In professional settings, building positive relationships with colleagues, clients, or customers can prevent conflicts from escalating in the first place. De escalation is a skill that improves with practice, experience. Let's keep learning. Let's keep adapting our approach based on different scenarios that we may encounter. Remember that de escalation is about promoting safety, resolving conflicts peacefully, and maintaining positive relationships. It's a valuable skill that can benefit both us personally and professionally. And in addition, in certain situations, it can also save lives. America's credit reporting system is broken. We saw the latest evidence of this last year when news broke that Equifax sent lenders millions of incorrect credit scores, some of which were off by at least 25 points for customers who are applying for auto loans, mortgages, and credit cards. U.S. customers have long complained about mistakes on their credit reports and credit bureaus' failure to fix these errors. And far too often, people are penalized for mistakes that the credit bureaus or data furnishers make, and irrelevant information such as a job loss or illness that doesn't predict credit default. This can keep people from getting mortgages, good interest rates on auto loans or credit cards, or even a job. We've passed the tipping point for an overhaul, but it's clear that we can't rely on the credit bureaus to reform themselves. The latest Equifax news should push Congress and regulators to finally implement fixes that consumers and advocates have long called for. That means making credit reports and scores fairer and more accurate and more transparent. In the US, credit scores can affect every aspect of someone's life. See, this 3-digit number can determine the interest rate you get on a mortgage, the APR you receive on a credit card, and the rates you pay for on a car or homeowner's insurance. There are three major credit bureaus: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, which collect information on an individual's credit use. And this information is then recorded on a credit report. And a 3-digit credit score is calculated using one of two major scoring models: FICO and Vantage score. Most scores range from 300 to 850, with higher scores indicating that a borrower is lower risk and more likely to make their on time payments. FICO uses factors like payment history, amounts owed, credit mix, length of credit history, new credit, and so forth. And while the best rates are generally reserved for customers who have scores in the 700s, credit is certainly available for consumers who score in the 500s and 600s, but they find that their interest rates are higher. And that's 57% of the US population that's below 650 or with no credit score at all. And that, I'm thinking, is really not a true number. But that is what researchers say. They say it's 57% of the US population. Well, it's still more than half, right? And while the best rates are generally reserved for customers who have scores in the 700s, what happened for those who are below that 57% of the US population, they're defined as subprime credit. And everyone in those subprime credit scores find themselves having subprime interest rates. Now, credit scores in the range of 580 to 669, they're about 18% of the US credit. And then there's the 11% who are 580 and below. That's the difference between subprime and ultra high risk. See, if you're 580 or below, you're considered ultra high risk. And yet, even though you may be able to qualify for better deals on financing than those with severe credit issues, subprime scores between 580 and 650 can still cause financial difficulties. For example, qualifying for certain types of financing, such as premium credit cards, may be completely out of reach. And some lenders don't even have a product designed for the high risk borrower. That leaves 43% of people with FICO scores over 750. Now, I'm a person that stay in the public eye. I'm also one that keeps my eye close to the market. I'm also one who deals with credit because in my occupation, outside of being a podcaster, credit is a factor in getting lending. So I keep my eye close to the market. Now, what I have not found is that 57% of my customers are 750 or above. that hasn't happened. I'll venture to say that 80% of my customers are not. But on the worldwide scale, again, researchers say I'm sorry, in the national scale, not worldwide, because we're only talking about the United States here. Because the other countries don't have this problem. It's a United States problem. The other countries don't have FICO scores and such. That's not happening in China and Germany. So those with elite scores find themselves being able to get all of the advantages. And it's said that these ones pay their bills on time, every time, without exception. Well, those with credit scores below 750 can be found to do that. But where the difference comes in is keeping that balance to limit ratio, which is credit utilization. See, they want you to keep your credit cards low, but have credit cards, but don't use them. Keep them low. Have a good mix of account types on your credit report, revolving credit cards, installment loans, but not too much. And don't apply for new credit often because, see, if you apply, you get these little dings on your credit every time you apply. So, what ends up happening is it's not as much of a credit issue as it is an economic issue because if you're not making as much money as you would like to make, then you run into difficulties because you may have to use your credit card 1 month to get by, or you may have to get a loan just to get by. And you may pay that credit card on time and you may pay that loan on time, but then now we're looking at, oh, your credit utilization is off. So then that's a socioeconomic problem because now we find that those with higher incomes usually have the higher credit. And we're going to talk also about the differences that occur racially. Then there are those, we talked about the 43% that have 750. We talked about the 57% who don't, but in that 57% are 15% of US customers who don't have a FICO score at all. Now, I was there. I was there as a young adult. I was under the age of 21. And I didn't have bad credit. As we know, bad credit can hurt you when you want to apply for new financing, including getting a credit card, a loan, a car. What you may not realize is having no credit score is even worse. Lenders may be nervous to loan you money when they have no indicator of how well you've managed your credit obligations in the past. And you could be in my shoes. I was a great renter at the time. And I missed any rental payments or anything that didn't involve going on my credit report. But see, to have this FICO score, this is what I had to have. And this is what some of you may have to have if you have no FICO score. You have to have at least one undisputed account that is older than 6 months. At least one undisputed account that has been updated within the last 6 months. No rotation on your credit report that you are deceased, of course. And according to FICO, around 15% of U.S. consumer credit reports don't meet these requirements. And therefore, they don't qualify for a FICO score. So me walking around being a renter for almost 2 years, and I didn't qualify for a FICO score because I had none of those things working for me. So whether you have no credit score or you have bad credit, several negative effects can come onto your financial life. There could be difficulty obtaining loans, as lenders are often hesitant to approve loans or credit cards for individuals with bad credit. And if they do approve, you may face higher interest rates, which can cost you more in the long run. Even if you approve for loans or credit, you will likely receive higher interest rates. This means you'll pay more for borrowing money, whether it's a car loan, mortgage, or credit card balance. Now we get into the point where landlords and property management companies also check your credit history when you apply for a rental property. And bad credit can make it challenging to secure a lease or may require you to pay a higher security deposit. You may be the greatest renter of all time, but if you have poor credit, guess what? You move into a new place, higher security deposit, or not being able to get in at all. Nowadays, we have employers performing credit checks as part of their hiring process, particularly for positions that involve financial responsibility. So, bad credit could potentially affect your job prospects. This is how urgent this is. This is why we're talking about it. And we're going to talk about reform. You can have trouble getting insurance because insurance companies may use credit scores to determine your premiums. Bad credit can lead to higher insurance costs for auto, home, or renters insurance. Did you know that? Your insurance rates could be high just because of your credit. You could have difficulty starting a business. You could be the next guru and can't get a loan. If you're an entrepreneur or want to start your business, bad credit can hinder your ability to secure business loans or finance. Then that finds you working some dead end job that you didn't want in the first place. Financial stress due to bad credit can strain relationships with family and friends, leading to emotional and psychological consequences. Just try being in a relationship where your wife, kids need certain things, and you can't get it because of your credit situation, and see what type of emotional or psychological consequences will come from there. Bad credit can limit your ability to invest, to even save money and plan for your financial future. All of that is sad. And it's no secret that good credit scores are an essential key to locking in attractive rates and offers when you apply for finance. And we gave an example earlier, but let's talk about another example. Let's talk about mortgage loans. It may surprise you to learn just how much lower credit scores may cost you. The extra interest fees can easily add up to well over 100,000 on a single mortgage loan. For example, on a $350,000 mortgage, let's just say that's a 30-year fixed mortgage with a 2.5% APR. You'd pay a total of 149,000 in interest over the life of the loan. Now we're talking, of course, a crazy low interest rate, but let's just do this just for the sake of argument. So you got a $350,000 mortgage, 30-year fixed loan, and it's a 2.5% APR, and your interest over the life of the loan is $149,000. But to do this, you need a FICO score of 760 or higher to potentially qualify for that rate. But if your FICO score was lower than 640, your rate could be double or almost double. Let's just say it's 4% instead of 2.5. At that rate, your total loan interest climbs to $259,000. See, the difference between the overall interest on these two mortgages adds up to $110,000. That's $110,000 more you would pay to finance the same house over the same length of time, all because of a lower credit score, all because of a score that could be about 120 points different. So earlier when we were talking about Equifax giving out incorrect information with points that were in double digits, that could possibly affect hundreds of thousands of dollars when we start talking about mortgages. You see how significant this is? You see how significant that reform may be? And we mentioned earlier about race. You see, a report found that significant percentage of Black and Hispanic individuals are credit invisible or unscorable compared to white and Asian individuals. 15% of those Black individuals and Hispanic compared to 9% white and Asian individuals. Furthermore, a larger percentage of credit invisible individuals reside in low income neighborhoods. Again, there's that socioeconomic situation. 30% these credit invisible people, whereas in high income areas is 4%. That's a big margin, 30 to 4. And it's important to note that credit scores don't create some sort of socioeconomic disparity. As the vice president of general manager at FICO told CNBC, she went on to say that they simply reflect the socioeconomic disparities that are out there. So, see, the socioeconomic disparities are already there in the United States, and credit just reflects that. Again, ways to keep individuals down. And it's no secret. We even mentioned this during a time of protest that, we see the systematic way of keeping a group of people down. And companies were saying, we're going to make these changes. We're going to reform ourselves. Well, we didn't hear any of the credit bureaus say that. They're not even trying to change the systematic way of keeping people down. Interesting. Now, let's talk about reform. Because one proposed solution to make people's credit visible is to include alternative forms of data on credit reports. For example, mortgage payments are included on your credit report, while rental payments are typically not. Now, they use the credit to judge whether you can get the rental property, but they don't apply those rental payments to your credit report to better you. Interesting. Therefore, the system benefits the homeowners, but not the renters. And then we earlier gave a scenario of what the difference would be if your credit scores were different getting a mortgage. It was $100,000, $110,000 difference between somebody with a 760 and somebody with a 640. But what if you're below 640? So you may not even have that problem of a different mortgage rate because you won't get that mortgage at all. And now we're talking about you may not be able to get a rental property at all because of your credit rate. Now, so we know there's got to be some type of reform, because what ends up happening is people pay high rental rates when they can get their apartment, much higher than it would if they were mortgaging a house. We find people paying $2,600, $3,500 a month just to rent something. Whereas if they had a mortgage, those properties would be cut in half. Experian Boost, launched in 2019, uses data not typically collected on people's credit reports, such as on-time utility, streaming subscription, and telecom payments. It's a free service, and it only considers positive payment history. So late payments on added accounts won't negatively affect your score. It also recently added the ability to include rental payments in the calculation of your credit score. That's good news, right? It's very good news. Now we're talking about reform in a sense, a smaller sense. But there's still some drawbacks. Just as homeowners are prone to falling behind on mortgage payments during a recession, well, renters are too. If credit bureaus or policymakers aren't careful, including alternative data could end up hurting the people that it's supposed to help the most. Another proposed solution is using cash flow data from people's bank accounts for underwriting. Yet more research is still needed. Credit underwriting with cash flow data involves using financial data insights from a bank account or other types of transaction accounts to evaluate consumers and small businesses for credit. When looked at, this data from non bank financial service providers such as Petal and Cabbage found that cash flow data for underwriting worked as well as traditional credit scores because it shows that people who borrow were able to pay back. And it also gave those with invisible or bad credit scores a credit score that was favorable. And of course, while the credit reporting system is not error free, the majority of people have found that mistakes on their reports have not even been discovered because unless you check those credit reports regularly, you have something like Credit Karma that can tell you of changes, you may not even know that anything happened at all. Credit scores provide an easy way for lenders to determine whether a borrower is creditworthy. See, it's an easy way. Now, that don't mean it's the right way. And what we see also is a growing number of buy here, pay here car loans. The problem with that is in states where interest rates are regulated, people still pay 29% interest on a buy here, pay here. 29% interest. And that's not even on a car they may want. It's on a car they may get. And that's on the states that's regulated. The ones that's not, the interest rates could be even higher. It's just completely out of hand. So whether the credit scoring and reporting systems can function in the favor of those who are being the lenders, it leaves many marginalized without credit scores or with poor credit scores, even if they pay on time because of credit utilization that we mentioned earlier. Now, all of this can harm people's ability to gain access to credit. And that's a problem that just frankly does not exist in other countries. And with 57% of the U.S. population falling in the category of having higher interest rates or total inability to gain credit, we must ask ourselves, how did we get here? You know we love our fans. We love those who write in. And some of these hobbies and special interests that you guys have been bringing in have been fantastic. Here's one from a fan telling us to get into teas. Yes, the word tea. You heard correctly. Did not know that tea could be a hobby. If you're not much of a coffee drinker, trying to reduce the amount of coffee in your life, they say get into tea. And we're not talking about those bags you get in a supermarket. We're talking about authentic Chinese teas with fantastic taste and proper ceremonies around the process. Teas can be a wonderful hobby. Today, there's a rich world of tea varieties, preparation methods, and cultural traditions to explore. We can start by trying different types of teas, learning about their origins, and experimenting with brewing techniques. Joining tea communities or visiting tea shops can also enhance our tea hobby experience. And here are some ideas that can deepen our tea hobby. Tea tastings. Yes, we could organize tea tastings with friends or join online at tea tasting events to compare and discuss different teas. There's tea gardens. We can visit tea plantations or gardens, and we have the opportunity to see how tea is grown and harvested. We can collect teapots, teacups, and other tea accessories to enhance our tea drinking experience. Also, study the history of tea, including its cultural significance in various countries like China, Japan, India, and England. Experiment with pairing teas with food to discover interesting flavor combinations. Then we can try our hand at tea blending by mixing different teas and different ingredients to create our unique blends. And learn about the potential health benefits of different types of tea, such as green tea oxidants or herbal tea calming effects. Explore the art of tea ceremonies, like the Japanese tea ceremonies or Chinese, and practice their rituals. Plan trips to tea producing regions to immerse ourselves in the local tea culture and witness tea production firsthand. We can read books, articles, and blogs about tea, including its preparation, history, and cultural significance. And of course, there are groups out there that we can join so we don't feel all alone. Yes, the world of tea is vast and diverse, so we can tailor our tea hobby to our interests and our preferences. And whether you're into the calming effects of a cup of tea or the age complexity of certain ones, there's always something new to discover in the world of tea. So enjoy your tea journey, and I'm going to join that one with you. Our sunflower message is the beautiful lyrics to an even more wonderful song by Minnie Riperton entitled Loving You. Loving you is easy because you're beautiful. Making love with you is all I want to do. Loving you is more than just a dream come true, and everything that I do is out of love. No one else can make me feel the colors that you bring. Stay with me while we grow old, and we will live each day in springtime. Because loving you has made my life so beautiful. And every day, my life is filled with loving you. If we haven't said that to someone today, or our loved one, a significant other, let's think about those words. Hey, maybe even play that beautiful song for our special. On Cash App, $ Live Laugh Talk, and on Twitter at Live Laugh Talker. Also on Spotify, hit the $, please, so that you can donate to support our podcast. Spotify will even set it up monthly for you so that you can do a little bit here or there if you like, because we appreciate it. And it's needed. Now, I'm sure you've also heard advertisements done for Spotify as well. So we appreciate you listening to us, gaining a fan base so that Spotify saw our podcast as one that could have advertisement support. But we still need those donations if you would send those in. Remember to go on to Etsy.com. There you will find, if you search, how did we get here? You'll find t-shirts, as well as coffee mugs and tote bags. Remember to rate us a 5 or whatever the highest is on your podcast platform. And tell your friends, family, and colleagues about us, as well as your peers. We need the support. Don't forget about it. When you listen, make sure you hit that follow button Make sure you also hit the share button and share on social media. We're also on social media. We want to remind you that we're on every major platform. That's TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We're on all of them. And what we do with every episode, so we urge you to go in and check every one of them. We put our episode to a little 60-second commercial with music, and the music is always interesting. We go with every genre of music. So I think you'll enjoy the video. You'll get a kick out of it. This is James and Georgia's baby boy signing off. And as you know, I can't wait to talk with you again soon.